So the issue of programming style has a lot to do with these vulnerabilities. You can look at code which does the same thing written by two different people, and it can be night and day in terms of how clear it is and how easy it is to modify, how easy it is to figure out what's wrong, how easy it is to figure out what it does and how to work with it. And if you're building pieces of program that are used by somebody else, or if someone else is building pieces of program used by you, this is front and center of what you've got to be thinking about. Because if it's done with appropriate programming style, you're going to be a lot better off, they're going to be a lot better off working together. Okay? And frankly, you're going to be a lot better off in the future dealing with your own code. Okay, so we're going to talk about a set of issues here. One of them is naming, very prosaic issue. How do you name things in your program? What name do you give to certain quantities, a global variable, a parameter to a function, an argument to a function? What names do you give to them? Turns out it matters. It matters a great deal. It matters very much in terms of the efficiency with which you can build that program, how quickly you can build it, and more to the point, how quickly you can get to the point where you're confident it works for you. We're going to be talking about expressions and statements, inventing, idioms, use of manifest constants, or so-called magic numbers, and comment. Ladies and gentlemen, the first day of this class, I indicated to you that this class will be placing a large emphasis on programming style in your submissions. This is not fluff. This stuff, because it seems sort of obvious in some cases, some people are inclined to dismiss this as not really getting to the heart of things. They're completely wrong. I spent decades of my life working in professional software development as well as development of software here in academia. And I will tell you that this is often what distinguishes most dramatically a highly successful person and someone who's not so successful. It's these practices and the processes that lie behind them. So I'd urge you to pay attention, both because your marks will reflect it and because your career will reflect it. Okay? So, motivation for the issue of programming style specifically is that within a project, typically software organizations impose a programming style. This is particularly true for firms in the software industry directly. So if you go to a Google, or you go to a Microsoft, or you go to an Apple, you're expected to adhere to certain guidelines when you build the program. If you're not naming things clearly, you're going to get dinged in your peer reviews. You're going to get dinged in your performance reviews. You're going to be viewed as someone who's underproductive because you're wasting a lot of people's time. Rather than making their job efficient, you're making it inefficient. So typically we have multiple developers who need to coordinate, and this is front and center. But more to the point, you also have to deal with yourself in the future. If you come back to code you wrote 6 months ago, it's going to help a great deal if you've written it cleanly as to how quickly you can get going again. So this thing is going to affect maintenance, it's going to affect the ability to quickly debug the code and to get it to the point where it's going to be working. Okay? So some characteristics of a good style. We're seeking style that allows for making clear the underlying logic, particularly bringing up the key elements of that logic in very transparent way. It makes use of the language, not in an obscure style just sort of playing around in a desultory way, but in a way that adheres to certain conventions that make the code clear. It's natural in some sense. It does things in a way that are a good fit to their function. very clear understanding of how to work together effectively when writing programs, how to create those programs to communicate to each other. And just like when we meet up and we exchange information, we don't want to just mumble in an incoherent way. It's important to create programs that are not incoherent, but clear. And as a matter of basic hygiene, folks, as a matter of basic self-respect, you should be trying to develop a sense of quality in what you do. And putting out certain types of code should be beneath your dignity. You should be aspiring to a certain level of quality in that code, a certain level of clarity, and you should not be satisfied until you can have that code reach a certain degree of clarity. And there's many ways to do that. So, the issue with styles is not so much to impose one universal style, because there's many possibilities. Different firms will have different recommendations of how to name things. However, the fact that you have a common style in a team makes all the difference. So you have to pick one style and stick to it. Okay? And if you're working with a program you didn't write, maybe it's a program from an open source system online, you should see what the conventions are there and stick to them. Rome, do as the Romans do. The goal here is to try to avoid some what are called bad smells in code. This is a formal term used in the industry. It's a formal term used by those who are documenting. They include things like duplicate code, long routines, if statements that go on and on and on, one if inside another, lots and lots of special cases where we're just loaded up with parameters of a function, or where we're heavily relying on global variables. There's a set of other things here, but I'm not going to go through these all exhaustively, just to give you a sense of some things that will make you worry about the code. Okay. Okay. So the first thing I wanna talk about is naming, and I think I'll pause this so that